Very excited to have on the show a guest, a Boston native, a man who throughout his career has had many roles as a real badass. A bit of an international ladies' man. You've been a spy. You've been a bank robber, I think. You've been a janitor, of course. Welcome to the show, Ben Affleck.
Yes, yeah. I actually have been a janitor. Shockingly.
It's great to have you here, Ben. And the first question I wanted to ask you, being from Boston,
Dunkings.
do you know a friend of mine named Andrew Sullivan? He is kind of the guy that you pretend to be.
Was he the quarterback for the Patriots for all those years?
You're talking about Drew Bledsoe?
Yeah. No, Scott Zolak, I think was the man.
No, but seriously, we have Andrew Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this conversation. Sully, obviously, we get to do it not as much as we'd like, and it seems like you always need an occasion for this, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and appreciate you being on the show.
Shit, dude, I just appreciate you coming down. Sorry to make you travel all the way to Virginia. I know you hate it here and hate the people, so... Like getting you out of your Michigan comfort zone.
Well, I hate the people everywhere. Yeah, that's just the reality.
We ain't wrong. That's why you always had a black eye, because you hated the people.
Yeah.
Is it weird being this close to your bedroom on the floor over there?
No, I was positive that was going to come up. I wasn't sure how.
That's why I asked you earlier. I was like, is anything off limits right now?
No, absolutely not. I guess we should just kind of do the backstory here.
This is where you cut and splice the picture of you on the dog bed?
Yes. I wish there was one.
We might have to hit Holly up for that one. Oh, there is one. Actually, I probably have it somewhere.
If you find it,
I'll send it to you.
Let me know.
That's going to go right now. Okay.
All right. So, this is a good time to segue into how this whole thing's come away. But, obviously we did a stint there at SEAL Team 2 together.
Yep.
It was awesome years, a lot of fun. I agreed. I believe there was a couch more or less right here where I got the plans for this tattoo.
You did.
There was a dog bed there.
Yep.
I slept at least a few nights.
You definitely slept
on that
in the dog bed.
Sammy, right? Wasn't the dog's name
was
Sammy?
Not happy.
Yeah, he didn't like sharing the bed, as I recall, but there wasn't much he could do about it at the time.
No. He was confused. As were we. When there's all these open beds and you're sleeping in the dog's bed.
It was the most comfortable one. There's no doubt about it. You didn't have very comfortable beds.
All right.
So we did SEAL Team 2 together. That was a blast. And then you went on to go be bigger and badder ass throughout your career. Spent almost 20 years until you medically retired. Mm-hmm. Multiple combat deployments, multiple adventures, and getting deeper and deeper into things. And then you got Silver Star, amongst others, and Purple Heart. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that. But and then, you get out, 3 years ago?
God, 2020. So
2020, 4 years. And jump into continuing to figure out how to save people. So be interesting to dive into the psyche of Sully. But
let's do it. Don't get lost.
Yeah. So the first thing, what's your background? What do you think led you to where we are today?
Honestly, just being service-oriented and wanting to make a difference, not just for myself, but for my family and friends in my community. And
were you always that? Do you think you had, is there an innate service?
Yes, and there's also the desire to always be the best at whatever I do and win. And I'm someone who's never liked losing, and I had an older brother who never let me win. So that definitely motivated me a lot, that if I'm going to do something, I'm going all the way, and I want to be the best at whatever I do. So when 9/11 happened, I knew I was meant for more than Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where I was working at the time. And
you could have made a big difference.
Just managing fleets. It was great. I actually learned a lot,
absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, is you can do great things in so many different ways.
Yeah. I did not do great things at Enterprise. I did things. I was one of the greatest rental car jumpers at Enterprise Rent-A-Car.
Like jumping dead batteries, you mean?
No, like jumping them into the air and seeing how far you could fly a rental car. I don't know. I am definitely not getting sponsored by rental car company, Enterprise anyway.
I could see a Super Bowl commercial next year where you were jumping a car.
Yes.
All right.
It's like
and I'll
Ferris
get a royalty
Bueller where
for
they're
coming.
jumping the Ferrari. Yeah. So, so 9/11 happened. I was at Enterprise and I just stopped. I was watching it on TV and I'm like, this isn't where I belong. And I went and found a recruiter. Like, how
Did you have
soon can you
military
get me
aspirations or
Yeah.
any thoughts of that before?
Absolutely. My grandfather was a Marine. My dad was in the Guard. And
Really?
My grandfather was World War II. And growing up in Massachusetts, as liberal as it is, it was super patriotic. And,
Yeah.
every traffic circle there has a sign that is either a Bronze Star or Silver Star recipient from Vietnam. And it was just a big thing. Overpasses had American flags even before 9/11. And
Really?
so I grew up in that environment and we would, all the kids would go play war. We called it war or
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Vietnam.
Well,
and
yeah,
we'd shoot fake guns and all that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there was always in the back of my head, but it was such a huge commitment to walk away from life, to give myself up for something greater. And
Yeah,
really-
that's a huge moment.
It
I
is.
think that's what people don't necessarily understand. Like for me, the hardest day of my entire military career was the first day. Like getting in the car with the recruiter is a pretty scary moment. Really, I mean, you're leaving everything.
Yeah.
and then obviously once you're in it, you're in it. But so how did you pick the teams?
I had seen Charlie Sheen. I don't know if he was a Navy SEAL. I don't know if you knew that.
Of course, of course I did.
Like every other
I've
good
also
team guy,
jumped off the Coronado Bridge.
That was in Virginia Beach. That wasn't the Coronado
Was it?
Bridge. Yeah, that
Oh,
was. It's
I
not
was-
there anymore, but it was in Norfolk.
Really?
Yeah,
I always thought
yeah.
that was
No,
Coronado.
no. I mean, that's why you got out early because you didn't know shit like that.
If only I had a better mentor.
Yeah. I'll tell Hollings said you said that. So I'd always thought about it. I definitely knew about the teams. I didn't know any SEALs. I didn't really know much about what happened other than reading Rogue Warrior, a couple of the books, and I just knew it was the best. I had heard they were the best, and if you want to be the guy that's on the front lines, and I did, then SEALs. And I couldn't imagine being in the military other than doing that job.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I actually bought a book called Special Warfare for Dummies. Literally the orange book with the
and I couldn't
goofy
read it, so I just threw it away and joined the Navy.
The SEALs was the shortest word, so I was like, "Oh, that's for me then."
It's like
Air
cheat code for the ASVAB. Yeah.
But that was literally though, and like in our time was all people that really were there because of 9/11 for the most part.
Absolutely.
Which is
that whole generation of guys who are now getting out or have been getting out for the last couple of years because they've done 20 years.
Yeah.
They all joined because of 9/11. And I relate that to my grandfather who joined because of Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And there's a lot of great people in the military right now. There's a lot of great people in special warfare right now, but their motivation is quite different than what our motivation was, and it shows. It shows in the overall, I guess, design of the military, and hopefully that changes because it's a scary thought.
It was changing at the time,
It was.
even, but like I remember, I was in Buds when Red Wings happened.
Yeah.
I was at first phase, so you were at the team because you were there 2 years before me.
Yep.
And like that was like, holy shit, this is real. Like what, over a dozen guys just died, and we're here training to go in there in a couple months.
Yeah,
and
it's surreal.
It is pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. And Red Wings was lone survivor. And,
right.
Yeah, it was tragic. I mean, and I remember sitting there. We were out in, God, I don't even know what the name of it, but we were out in a place where you couldn't have any cell phones or computers or anything. They take them away when you go in. So we were kind of waiting on people to let us know what happened. We were getting bits and pieces, and we hadn't heard the names. And I know guys from my Buds class had gone to that team, and I remember thinking, this was even before I had deployed for my first deployment, and thinking how pissed I was that all the guys that went to Team 10 were already downrange, deployed, fighting, and I had to do another 2 years.
Yep.
And just because I checked in while SEAL Team 2 was coming back from deployment.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
And then it made it even worse.
Miserable
Now,
spending 2 years with those bastards.
no, it totally is. Especially as a new guy, man. Like, you get full benefit. You really get good at taking out trash. Dude, I checked in. It's like, hey, there's a paintbrush over there. We're going to paint the walls.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm a fucking Navy SEAL. Yeah. Get 2 brushes.
Yeah, there's a lesson to be had there, though.
Yeah, no, it's definitely
Yes,
some humility. For
there
sure.
was a guy in my bud's class who was in our platoon whose brother could have been on that bird.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I do.
You know what I'm talking
a
about?
lot of guys could have been on that bird.
Well, yeah.
They actually got pulled off because of the weight.
Yeah, and they pulled him out of the class, and we're like, what the hell? And because we were like after Hell Week, but still first phase, and they just put us in like one of those classrooms, and we just sat there. I was like, is this some sort of test or something? And then they came in and told us that what had happened. But yeah, I mean, and then that became, maybe not to that magnitude, but then it became all too frequent.
Yeah.
That you'd get news like that, which is.
Yep. I mean, I would say greater magnitude with extortion, right?
Wow, that was like the bookends. Actually, that was the
your career.
bookends to my career. Like the first one, and then I was like 2 months from getting out and extortion.
Yeah.
And that was a night that nobody will. Virginia Beach in general was a weird town for like the whole feel like it cast a shadow.
Yep.
And I remember. I mean, you called me. You probably called a lot of people. You called me and told me it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, Lauren's like, why is the Sully guy? I was like, I think he's deployed.
Yeah.
And
There was a period of, I don't know, maybe 5 years where every time my phone rang unexpectedly, I was like, someone's dead.
yeah,
And a lot of the times it's exactly what it was.
it was. I got a call one time you got shot.
Yeah, that happened. Thank God I survived.
Fuck, that was probably one of the worst moments of my life.
That was tough. That wasn't good for me.
That
either.
was pretty shit. But it was worse for me, man. Come on.
Way worse for you.
Stop making this all about you.
Yeah.
What were the circumstances of that? I don't think I've even talked to you about it.
Right place, wrong time. It was one of those ops, and I don't talk a lot about ops, but we were just somewhere new, and you do the war in Afghanistan long enough in Iraq, and they learn how to deal with it, and that when you go into these places, typically they're not fighting back because the way that politics were at that point in the war was if we get caught, we get arrested, we go to Afghan prison for 2 years, and then we're getting out just because of the system over there. So it was frustrating for us.
Yep.
But then we started pushing into these other places where they hadn't got the memo on don't fight back because you'll all die.
Yeah.
And man, anybody within sound was shooting at us, and it was one of those nights where, we were just lucky to get out, and thank God to the everybody that supported us, and we had a really good plan, and that saved lives because a few of us got shot. And for me, I just just exposed myself to a threat that I shouldn't have, and took a round from about 15 feet, and I mean a dude dumped an AK and hit me once, and how I survived and how I didn't get hit more, I have no idea, but.
Yeah,
That's I struggled with that for a couple of years.
I would think so. I would think so.
The guilt of surviving when so many of my buddies had literally far less exposure, I guess.
Yeah,
they did the right thing and still died, and I did something stupid and almost paid for it. So
no, that's no shit. I mean, you had a little rough patch there for a while.
Yeah,
remember a couple of years between the head
surgeries and brain tumors and hip, back.
And
it's tough. Yeah, that job will take a toll on you physically and mentally, man. And if you're not prepared, which I don't think any of us were prepared going into it because we hadn't really seen that level of combat since Vietnam. The teams didn't really have any involvement in Gulf War. And now here we are in Iraq, here we are in Afghanistan, here we are looking at other places, and God, I fucking I lost 3 of my best friends in 3 consecutive years, and nobody taught me how to cope with that. And
no, they definitely did not. They definitely did not. And I don't know. Well, you were in law. I mean, I don't know if they got more up to speed on it, but
I think we're in a much better place now.
Yeah, that's good.
Than we were at the time, and especially at the command. We have psychs, we have all these people, but nobody's. I mean, they say they're forcing you to do checkups after, but nobody. Like you go in and I'm good, man, because nobody wants to risk not being able to deploy or not being able to do the job. So they're holding everything in, and as you know, we drank a little bit, right? I don't want to say excessively, but we self-medicated excessively.
No doubt that was.
We were a group of functioning alcoholics going over and doing that job, which was not healthy. And honestly, after I got shot was the first time I actually went and talked to a therapist.
Really?
And for me, that was like the beginning of, putting my shit together and being there and being back. And
was that post like the medical, the brain tumors and all that? Or
that was after the brain tumor.
Okay. So because that had to be tough too.
Dude, honestly, no. I think it's just the mentality we have. And it's a funny story because I went to NICO, and we all know NICO's like the checkup, and I was going to work, and I couldn't remember the guys working for me. I couldn't remember their names. And these are guys that I've worked with for years and been in my team, and I'm filling out all the paperwork and writing their name down every day. And I'd get in there, I'd be having a conversation, and I'd be like, "The fuck is this guy's name?" And I'd have to run and get my phone, and I'd go through my text messages until I found a text message from like, "Oh, that's this guy." And then I'd run back in there and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, here we go."
And that didn't freak you out.
No, I'm just thinking, all right, TBI. This is like getting so many explosions and getting hit in the head. And
that's not good news either. But
no, but I felt like it was normal,
explainable. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, at some point I'll get checked out, and once I stop doing this, I'll be fine. But that's why I went to NICO. I'm like, all right, I got TBI, and I'm explaining stuff, and ironically. Which, not ironically, but unfortunately, we've had, I don't know, in my time since I found out I had my tumor and had surgery to have it removed, and when I got out, there was about 10 or 11 guys that had brain tumors, and a good significant amount of them died because it was cancerous.
Really?
All from that little command. So there's something going on, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I think now they're finally starting to investigate.
Really?
I think it's the jammers and the radios, because I carried a radio for a couple deployments. And then you're sitting in these Humvees where they're putting the jammers on. And you're just sitting in
and they tell you not to sit near them, but you can't.
Yeah, you can't help it. Like, oh, do I want to get blown up, or do I want to have this thing in my ear? But so I was going up to NICO, and on day, 2 weeks before, one of our guys had a brain tumor and just had surgery. And I hadn't at that point been talking to him, but I knew he was there, and I was like, all right, we're going to go visit him as soon as we check in. So day one, I do my in-processing, I finish up. He's in the hospital. We're in the NICO part. I walk up and see him, and he's actually going in for a second surgery because he had brain matter coming out of his nose, because his tumor was behind his sinuses. And he didn't realize he couldn't smell, and he figured it out because one day he's changing his baby's diaper, and his wife walked in. It's like, oh my God, it's awful. And he's like, "What? I don't smell anything." Like, yeah, you probably got something going on. So he had surgery. I check up with him, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I was in NICO." And on day 2, they have what's called a high Tesla MRI. So it's like a 3 Tesla MRI that they can 3D map your brain. And what they're seeing with us, like the NFL players that have the spots on the outside of the brain, is our guys are having spots on the inside of the brain that they're attributing to the blast waves traveling through the brain and reverberating off the helmet, because the ballistic helmets are actually keeping the blast waves in the brain and not letting them pass through you. Right? Yes. Which is funny because they're not stopping bullets either, because they're a 9mm helmet and we're getting shot at with AK. But they do have some benefit. So he's telling me stories. Like, he's like, I had my MRI, and then the next morning I walk in and I get a text from my nurse, because everybody's assigned a nurse case manager, and she's like, "Hey, I need to see you right now." And he's like, okay, that's weird. And so he walks over to the building, goes to the nurse's office, and she meets him in the hallway. And it's like, come with me, and grabs his hand and takes him into the office. And the entire medical staff is in the office sitting, waiting for him. And he's thinking, man, this can't be good.
That's not cool.
And he sits down and they're like, you have a brain tumor. Here's what, blah, blah, blah. Here's what it is. We don't think it's cancer. Here's your options. And he's like, okay, well, let me get a second opinion and then we'll go from there. And he says, so he goes, gets a bunch of second opinions and find out that the doctor at Bethesda, the military doctor, trained under one of the best neurosurgeons in the world. And so he ended up using that doctor, which helped me down the road. I used the same doctor.
Really?
So the next day I have my MRI, and the next morning I get up and I'm like, all right, I'm up early. I'm going to go visit with this guy and see how he's doing today. And I'm walking up the stairs with another guy, and my phone rings, and it's a nurse that says, I need you to come see me immediately. I look at the guy, I go, hey, bro, I got a brain tumor. I'll be right back. I walk into the hallway, and she's standing there waiting for me. She grabs me by the hand, walk into the office. Entire medical staff's in the office, and I just start laughing.
Wow.
And they're like, we got to tell you, you have a brain tumor. And I start laughing again. And it threw them off. They didn't know what to think. Like, why is this guy laughing that just found out he had a brain tumor? And I'm thinking, man, I knew this was happening because this is what they told the other dude. And they're like, I asked them, like, is it cancer? They said, probably not. Like, this type of tumor, how it presents, probably not cancer. Here are your options. I was like, all right, let's get it out. Okay. Do you want to talk? I'm like, no, I'm good. And I went and told the guy, went and saw the guy, and I'm like, bro, you're not going to fucking believe this.
I got the funniest story for you.
And and that's how I found out I had a brain tumor. And within a couple months, I was having brain surgery, and they cut it out, and I'm good now.
Healed up just in time to go get shot.
They didn't know which the tumor was and which one the brain was because they're about the same size. And I think they got the right one. I don't know.
It's tough to say.
Say. I still don't know because I didn't get any smarter, but I didn't get any dumber either. So
that's a win then.
Yeah.
So but honestly, all of that. That's a lot of shit. I mean, that would put a lot of people in a pretty serious tailspin.
Yeah.
Do you think your resilience do you think you're just generally a more resilient person? Do you think your training helped? Do you think?
I think all of the above. I think I am a resilient person. I think I grew up that way, just playing sports my whole life and being in a community where that was prioritized. And, our generation, are you injured or are you hurt? Right. And if I can still do my job, then I'm not injured. I'm just hurt. And, resiliency is also communal. And I am surrounded by all these dudes that I don't want to let down. So it's just, all right, let's just tuck all that bad stuff down in there, and I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to, and I always went to work thinking if I don't outperform this dude, he's going to take my job. So I have to be the best. Every day for me was a selection. And just because my buddy died, or I have a brain tumor, or I got shot, or had, it doesn't mean I can't go in and perform my job the best that I can. And eventually that takes a toll on you, right? And what I did find out when I finally started talking to someone was, there are outlets for this other than drinking whiskey and going out and shooting guns all the time. And not
what was yours? What did you figure out?
Talking and helping. Like my mental health. Well, two things, like physical exercise. So working out for me is my downtime. That's how I unwind. That's when I do my best thinking. I said this on another podcast, and I have a whiteboard in my garage. And as I'm working out and ideas come to me, I put them on the whiteboard, and then I screenshot it. And when I'm working, I have that.
That's a great idea.
And then, and this was my therapist at the command, who she was absolutely amazing. Encouraged me to start talking to other people because guys were starting to come in with the same stuff. All the guys, same stuff. And as I started talking to other people, I realized that it was bringing stuff out of me that I didn't know I had. It's like teaching CQB or teaching shooting. The more you share with other people, the better you get at it.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, it was like that for mental health with me. And the more I shared and the more I helped, the better I felt. And the more willing I was to go try these other modalities. And I was never one to take meds and do all that stuff. So, it's great. And
that's an awesome point.
It's why I do nonprofit work, right? Because I know I'm helping a community that really needs it. And law enforcement, in my opinion, is 10 years behind where we were on changing the culture to accept
Yep.
talking about mental health issues. And
No, this is a perfect segue into it. So, the big thing is you are started this foundation, Community First
Yep.
Project. I'm sure you'll get into the detail, but the basic is you go around and you train police forces, any police force that's willing, for free, based on the money that you go raise and the time and all that you guys donate.
Yep.
On how to deal with active shooter,
Yeah.
hostage, basically hostage rescue.
Yep.
So to not so to speak. Unfortunately, it's
the truth.
the fucking
Yeah.
truth.
It's spot on.
But I was thinking about this, and we did a really cool event that you came out and hosted a couple years ago to raise a little bit of money. And we were talking to people afterwards, and that's when you kind of gave me the first download over what it is. And the thing that I was talking to people afterwards, and I guess I never really thought about it, but we would go on to deployment, and you're gone for 6 months, and you're in the zone, and there's violence happening, but you can't really, you're just in this bubble.
Yeah.
And I never thought, like, you're going to go from, like, helping your kid with their math homework to, like, ring-a-ling-a-ling, there's a school shooting going on.
Yeah.
Get down there and diffuse the situation with no training,
None.
no backup, no plan, no, understanding of what is even inside the building. It's an absurd job that we ask police to do.
It really is. And even worse than that is it's not SWAT teams responding to these things,
Right.
It's patrol officers and school resource.
Yeah, because they're the ones that are there.
it's proximity. They're
Right.
just closest to the event and
Yeah.
they're the least trained.
Right.
And, if you think about, we screen our people. So we screen for mental capacity and the ability to handle stress. And then physical.
In the teams you're talking about.
In the teams, just to
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
buds,
yeah,
not even
right.
to get to the command.
Yeah.
To go to buds,
Yep.
there's a level that's much higher than what officers would be screened for to go into the police department.
Right.
Because we have so few billets compared to almost 800,000 cops in the U.S. So
That's what
right off the
matters.
bat, we have a higher level of ability to handle situations like this. But on top of that, we do a 6-month deployment. We train for 18 months
Yeah.
to go do
For that
a
6
6-month deployment.
Yeah.
And you get to the command, you train for 12 months to
Yeah.
go do that 4-month deployment.
I don't even know how many thousands and thousands of rounds you shot
Yep.
in different circumstances in training.
Absolutely.
And on the range, going through the houses, just to go there for 6 months and isolate yourself and focus
Yeah.
on nothing but that.
Yep.
And, let's face it, you're over there and you're in another country
Yeah.
with bad guys.
Yep.
Right? And so firefights are firefights. Now the stress level when you're in your hometown.
Yeah.
You're not even in your home country. You're in like your hometown. There's children in the school,
Yeah.
right? A miss is a problem.
Yeah.
A mistake
absolutely
is a
right.
fucking problem. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
and
critical.
we're asking people to do that with no training. So what you've done,
None.
and I want to hear how you kind of figured this out, or how did you start it? But so
yeah.
you basically you take your guys who are the elitist of the elite
Yeah.
warriors on the planet, and bring your tactics and give them liberally to the police forces so that they can use them
Yeah.
to keep people safe, to keep themselves safe, and so forth.
That's exactly right. It's it's my training is built off the principles of Green Team, which is selection for Dam Neck
Yep.
and crawl, walk, run. But at the end of the day, our nonprofit is about community safety, and we have all these shootings in public and in schools, and the ability to respond faster and appropriately and make better decisions so we don't have another Uvalde or something worse is paramount. And I've trained law enforcement since Team 2, right? We worked with Norfolk back then, and everywhere we would go do training in urban areas in a city,
Yep.
we'd get hosted by a police department so we could use their facilities in the way that we would give back as we would train them.
Yeah.
And that's at the SWAT level.
Right.
And seldom did I find a SWAT team that I felt was capable or where I had the impression that they would be.
Right.
Which is a problem where most people think when something happens that a SWAT team is coming and that SWAT team is capable of doing the job. And unfortunately, it's hit or miss around the country. So when I got out, I knew I wanted to help law enforcement. I just didn't know how.
Yeah. Well, and it's, it's the SWAT teams, they're badasses.
Yeah.
They are exceptional citizens, but
Absolutely.
they just don't have the same resources.
Or training.
You don't have, well, and training, is
Time,
resources.
you
So
name
you
it.
can't expect the same level if
No.
you're not doing the same level of training. Actually, you were there when we were at when you told me about this thing. I don't know if you made this up, because if so, then it was definitely your brain they kept. But it's a great.
I don't ever make stuff up unless I'm on a date. Just kidding.
You don't. Just kidding, Lee. You don't rise to the level of your expectation. You sink to the level of your training.
Yeah,
that's so true. That is so true.
Yep.
And that's where the amount of training that you do in, whether it's special forces, let alone the command that you were at,
Yeah.
you're living it. Your life is that, and then it's like you don't play golf and then somebody puts you on the PGA Tour all of a sudden.
Yeah.
How do you expect that?
The analogy I like to use, because people understand sports, nobody understands tactic. If you talk to the layperson, they don't see a difference between me and, airborne, right? They don't see a difference between me and a SWAT team. To them, it's all the same, and we all have the same capabilities. But what we're talking about is the difference between a pro bowler and in some cases like junior high sports, not SWAT team. We're talking like patrol. So people understand sports, and I tell them, imagine taking a high school baseball player and saying, hey, I need to make you into a quarterback. So I'm going to give you 16 hours of training on how to be a quarterback. And I'm going to bring Tom Brady down and have him teach you how to throw a ball and, how to hit a guy, being covered by another baseball player who's pretending to be a professional football player. And at the end of the training, we'll put you through some scenarios that are all canned to make you look good and leave here feeling like, all right, I'm a good quarterback. And then you're going to go back and you're going to play baseball for 5 years. And I'm going to call you out of the blue and say, hey, man, Mahomes is hurt. You're starting in the Super Bowl. And then you're like, well, I don't know how to play football.
And
like, I have this signed piece of paper that says you're a quarterback, man.
Right.
Get in there.
And if you don't throw a touchdown, people die.
Yeah. And if you fail, we're going to put you in jail.
Yeah.
Because you did it on purpose, because you wanted to hurt this person. Right. You wanted to do. I couldn't imagine being a cop right now.
Yeah. So do the cops love the training that you guys do?
We have yet to get any negative feedback.
How could they really?
It's they are knocking down our door, and it's unfortunate we can't afford to train every department that comes to us, but certainly that's the goal.
What is a training run? What is one training?
About $25,000, and as I'm still trying to hire out, so that probably is going to go up.
And that's 800,000 cops total. How many departments are there in? Thousands, right?
Yeah, lots. And then every city has federal, state. Municipalities. So,
but they must love the opportunity to dig into your guys' brains.
But it is still hard for them to get the training. There's a manning problem in law enforcement right now. Right. So just because I'm offering a 40-hour course doesn't mean they have the time or the manpower to be able to do it. So a lot of the time it's regional, where I can pull two officers from here, two from here, and we can build a course out and get them a baseline.
So
that's what
40
it is.
hours.
It's a baseline.
It's like do you do it? Is it like 5 consecutive days?
Yes, it is consecutive.
So a guy has to miss work for a week. Basically.
It does, or get paid overtime. Like BPD, Boston, they'll come, they'll work, they'll do the course, and then they'll go work an 8-hour shift. That's how bad they want the training and need the training.
Wow.
And what unfortunately is out there right now for active shooter training, and we are not necessarily just active shooter training. We are any kind of critical incident response.
Right.
And what I tell people is, hey man, I am going to help your officers make better decisions under stress, because that's what it's training under stress is the key. Yeah. And that's what we're really good at the command is recreating warlike scenarios to make our guys perform better when they're in the real world warlike scenario.
The fear is the big thing that I've become sort of, I don't want to say infatuated. It's become something I've just become really curious about.
Sure.
It's just the concept of it. And like I said, there's fear in the moment, like a lion gets out of a cage, right? And you're going to run or whatever, try and fight it. But there's also fear of there's a freeze, because there's more than just fight and flight. There's fight, flight, or freeze.
Sure.
And freeze is a more common reaction to stressful situations that are not posing an imminent physical danger to you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think separates leaders, in my experience, whether that's military, whether that's business, whether that's law enforcement, or anything, or even just in your own life.
Yeah.
Like, is understanding how do you get over that fear. So like, you said it like the first 30 seconds, like you go away to the Navy and you're throwing everything away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fearful moment that you could.
Absolutely.
There's a million ways to get out of that too.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, I sprained my ankle.
Yeah.
One leg's longer than the other. There's a million ways to not go through it.
You tried the gay thing, but that was right after they passed the.
I was so close. I was so close. I'm still.
Damn, got him again.
But it's
You
like,
can stop doing that, by the way. You're already out.
I just don't want to get recalled.
Oh, this was a bad idea.
Just starting here. But like, how do you, have you ever thought about like that part of
Fear?
fear, sure. So let's say you are, there's a million fear scenarios, but let's say you're riding around a patrol car, right? You get the call.
Yeah.
You have the option to be like, I'm far away.
Of course.
You could. And
Yeah.
how do you, but recreate, I think that's the key, is what you said, is you have to, just like being a quarterback for the first time in the Super Bowl, or what, you have to test fear constantly and find the thing that makes you afraid and confront it. Or I believe it's like a muscle. I think somehow fear response is a muscle.
Yeah, but what beats fear is knowledge. I mean, funny. I was listening to Tom Brady today. We keep talking about him because he's the perfect man. We both know this. It's not Eli Manning. It's Tom Brady. But
there's a story I was going to bring up.
Talking about the Super Bowl, and he had 2 weeks to prep for it, and he's like, I watched game film all day, every day, and when I would go on the field, I knew what play the defense was running before I called the offensive play. So people thought I was making these crazy decisions, but in reality, I knew what to do because I knew the defense so well that I could see a body movement or a tell that made me, they're blitzing, they're dropping back into cover 2. So he was just calling audibles at the line because the defense already gave away their hand.
Right.
So when we think about the training that we do, is we understand our adversaries so well because we practice so much that we have this knowledge that gives us confidence and allows us the threshold we have to where we hit fight, flight, freeze is that much higher than the average person.
Yeah.
Because we have the knowledge set that we have confidence going into these situations that we can do it. And a lot of what we do is we're giving these officers confidence because they've never had it.
That is probably the truest. I mean, that's like, you go through that and you're like, I can actually do this.
Yes.
And not only, like I have it's one thing to believe for no reason, like you could pull the sword out of the stone, but like there's a whole nother thing to actually know what you're going to do. And that, I guess I always thought about preparation.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's got to be the number one way to overcome fear.
It should be. And we're in an unfortunate time right now where these things keep happening. And I tell people they're going to keep happening. And Uvalde right now is the standard of training for law enforcement. Uvalde, one of the worst massacres we've had on children in this country. And that's what I expect when these things happen, and hope right now that doesn't happen, because that's the level to which we are training police right now to be able to respond to this.
Yep.
And in this country, there's no one else that can respond. Not legally. Maybe, if it happened at my kid's school down the road, I bet you I'm going to beat them there if I know about it.
Right.
But, not everybody has my knowledge and skill set.
Yeah.
But
or those getaway sticks.
Or the getaway sticks. I go fast.
How's that wing healing up?
Yeah, good enough. No more softball for me, but it's too competitive.
I guess we got to tell that. Probably the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life was you trying to catch a fly ball.
That wasn't even that one. It was the next one. I wish it was that one because I collided. But it was the next play. I was fielding a ground ball and it just popped. My calf. Yeah.
Ouch. I could tell too. I thought it was worse. I thought it was the Achilles because I did that.
I did too.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
That's the worst injury I could ever think of.
Thankfully, it wasn't that.
Thankfully, it's true. But anyway, it is. That's an incredible thing. Have you ever talked to people that have been like cops that have been in those situations?
Yeah.
Post facto.
Yes.
Like what? How do they sort of digest and deal with that?
It's hard, right? So we talk about mental health in our community. Like imagine going into a school and seeing children.
Yeah, that's got to be probably the worst thing you could really think of.
And I've had police officers reach out to us because we've worked with their departments in the past, and they know our guys have struggled with mental health issues from trauma related to combat. And they're like, what did you do? How did you get past this? I can't sleep. I can't close my eyes without seeing those kids. And you know, we've fortunately and unfortunately, we've been able to share some of the things we've learned over the years on how we combat that PTSD.
That's pretty
with
awesome.
some of the police officers. And
is that like
it's a
an
natural
official
connection.
part of your thing, or is that just something that happens?
It is a pillar right now, but we don't have to fund it because it's just conversations. So what I will do
at some point, somebody's time is worth it.
It is right now. It's all voluntary, and it's less. It has been less mental health and more physical health. Meaning, it started randomly where someone reached out to me who had a police officer that had been shot in the arm, and it was similar to my injury, and said, "Hey, would you mind talking to this guy and just making sure he's getting the right therapy and surgery and all that stuff?" And the guy I started this with had the same injury also. So the two of us are just sitting here helping him and talking to him. And then, someone else, hey, this guy got shot. So let me, connect him with someone who had a similar injury. And that's kind of been a thing we've been doing where we pair up these officers who either take a life on the job or have been, catastrophically injured on the job.
Yeah.
And we line them up with someone for some peer mediation. It's nothing clinical about it. It's just, I get
That's
where you're
awesome.
at and what can I do to help? That's it. So it's, something we offer every training we do, we talk about it.
Right.
And I think it's going to grow more as we get bigger.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Like I
needed.
think I could see that being a big deal. That's pretty awesome.
It's a community right now, culture-wise, that's 10 or so years behind where we are. And even when it comes to training, but mental health, the culture needs to change. It needs to grow. It needs to advance, or you're going to see the suicide rate continue to rise. Especially
Suicide rate amongst law enforcement.
Law enforcement, right? Especially with the discontent and flat out hate they're getting
That's
from
the
certain
crazy
members
part.
of society right now.
Yeah, that's the
as
crazy
well.
part. I feel like that's changing. I hope
The
it's
pendulum
changing.
is swinging back. I think
It had to go so far to change course, but
it did.
I think people realize that a world where nobody's looking out for them is not a great one.
Yeah.
Because I really do. I sort of view being in law enforcement, that day to day, as heroic as anything.
It really is.
Because again, you're going to have that horrific thing happen, but still got to mow the lawn, right? You still got to
go
take
to
your kids to school,
football game or
Right.
softball game,
and
or
you've got to sit
whatever.
there and like try and not think about that.
Yeah.
And that's and it's also too. It's like right. It's over 30 years, 40 years career.
Yeah.
That this is just going to build up. And
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we're undermanned, so you're going to work 60 hours this week, and we're not giving you any firearms training or jiu-jitsu or box. So you're going to have to do that on your own time for no pay. In fact, you're going to have to pay for it yourself.
Right.
How do you think that fucking mental attitude is at that point in law enforcement? Like, what are the odds that they're going to take, after working a 60-hour week, hours out of their schedule instead of going to hang out with their kids to do something on top of what they're already doing?
Right.
And by the way, you don't get paid to work out, so you're going to have to do that in your own time as well, so you're in shape.
Right.
So we wonder why
and then
the
it's
mental
going to
health
be
is so low.
it's kind of like the equivalent of like the Vietnam vets that came back and people spitting on them. You know what I mean? It's like
it's unbelievable.
it is. I think there's a lot more sport out there for them than obviously it's like the silent majority, but I hope they know that anyway, I guess is my point. But
yeah, well, we're trying, and I've had a lot of other resources, communities, nonprofits, people reach out to me wanting to help because they support, not to support me, but to support law enforcement,
Right.
And they believe in the mission we have and think that we are doing a good thing, and we are. And ask any department that we've trained so far. I've had departments go out and raise more money for me, so we would come back.
Really?
And shout out to Framingham, Massachusetts. Their chief is the absolute man. He's raised a bunch of money, and we have one training left, and we'll have that whole department knocked out.
That's awesome.
And that'll be the first department where we've trained every officer in the department.
Nice.
And he'll advocate for us.
That's
He'll
cool.
support us. He'll come to events. Not just him, but also other members of that department. They've been fantastic.
That's awesome.
And they're leading the way, man. Like, you think about having a department of police officers that have all been trained by Tier 1 Navy SEAls.
No, it's
That community should feel safe.
absolutely. Well, and like you said, they're going to be confident, like it or not.
Safety, confidence, right? And I'll tell you what I tell the departments is that this is a taste. Right, 40 hours isn't enough. It's not even close enough. 40 hours.
It'd be good to do that at least once a year, if not more.
That should be done at the academy,
Right.
And then advanced training,
right.
going forward. And right now, in-service training in law enforcement nationally is 40 hours a year, and that is anything. It's not tactical training. It's not shooting. It's, hey, guess what? DEI training this week, and that's your 40 hours of in-service training. Or we got this new program in your vehicle computer that you have to learn. So here's your training. Yeah. It's not necessarily tactical training. Or maybe you get an active shooter course once in your career that's 18 or 27 hours. I don't know. So. Right. If I'm giving you a 40-hour course, it's a crash course feeding through a fire hose, but it's going to identify a lot of the problems that then you can build on going forward, but you have to commit to that.
Yeah, yeah.
And, at the end of the day, my opinion, if Sully could fix the world,
I believe
which in law enforcement, I think I would have a pretty good chance of fixing the training issues.
Yeah.
Because what we teach, it can encompass the entire part of the job, a warrant service, a traffic stop, a domestic.
Yeah.
It's not just active shooter or critical incident.
Well,
but if you train them 1 week out of every month, meaning you hire it up so that you could pull a quarter of your staff offline for 1 week a month, and you did 1 week off, 3 weeks on every month. Think of the advances in public safety that would follow that. The ability to target ID and de-escalate situations.
No, that's true. And the reality is, it's kind of like a peace through strength type thing. But when an officer or a group of officers has a certain confidence and presence, they're going to stop a lot of things before they start.
Yeah.
Because that you can tell when you can sense. I mean, we're all animals. You can sense when somebody's just got that thing where it's like, yep, I'm not going to continue to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you can't screen police officers the way you do for damage.
Not unless we want 500 police officers.
You wouldn't have enough cops, right? So, but you have to give them, you have to enable them. Like the half of the Uvalde officers had active shooter training. And look what happened, right? So obviously what we're doing right now with police is not working, and we keep seeing it over and over. And the difference now is we have them all wearing body cameras, so we get to watch. And one of the reasons I started this is because I would watch these incidents after the fact and listen to the public outcry, and I would see all the training scars or the lack of training. And I would say, hey, you know what? If they had done this, which is something that's easily teachable, it could have fixed the problem.
Yeah.
And then reading all the AARs from these incidents, I'm thinking, man, all these AAR points are issues that should have been figured out in training, not in a real world situation. Like, you shouldn't have people die to figure out that you need communications between departments from the same region, but a different headship.
Right.
There's all these little things that we're screwing up or are being screwed up because we don't want to invest in their abilities.
That's what it comes down to, the investment. So effectively, and I'm not against this. You kind of wish it wasn't so, but so we basically as a society have to invest in our police because the government money is being tied up in whatever else. And the reality
there is money for it, right? And the government actually throws a lot of money into law enforcement for grants and other. I think the pot right now through the Department of Justice is $600-something million.
Okay.
What I would argue is, well, that money's not going to the right stuff.
Right.
Right. That money's going to X, Y, Z, when in reality it needs to go to ABC. Like, hey, yeah, that's great.
interesting.
You just spent $300,000 on virtual reality goggles so your officers can work through situations. But I just took them to the range and they couldn't hit a target at 7 yards. Right? Do you think maybe spend that money
Playing
on
video
some
games.
fundamentals of shooting instead of spending all that money on these VR goggles that are
Yeah.
going to sit on a shelf and not get used because people realize quickly that
Yep.
it's worthless? Hey, how about you invest in a red dot for all your pistols?
Yeah.
So now the guys that are missing at 10 yards and girls, like
Yeah.
it's a cheat code.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I'm surprised they don't have
I
it,
don't know
'cause
why
that's not
they're
even
talking to
expensive.
guys like us who did this for a living,
Yeah.
specifically on the critical incident response.
Yep.
You know, a lot of this stuff, they're just wasting money. That's it. It's just a
Yep.
waste of money. It's unfortunate.
Interesting. I think they're talking about
Scary.
that these days. The wasting of money.
Yeah. I heard it. There's some dude out
thing or
there.
two.
Rhymes with Elon. Yeah.
So change gears real quick because you brought up something, and I don't want to bring up any sort of traumatic war zone stories, but
Said
do you
traumatic, I
remember the it was a dark and stormy night. We were in Iraq, and there was it was like huge bomb, and the guy caught it with one hand on his helmet like this, and he won the Super Bowl. Remember that?
I do, and that
We
is
were watching-
traumatic.
we were
Yeah, David Tyree.
We were watching it in the gym.
What was that girl's name? Eli? Eli Manning? Yeah.
Who'd they beat?
I was deployed for both of those Super Bowls. I was in Afghanistan for the other one.
Were you?
The Giants won. Yeah.
I remember watching it in the gym because that was the only place that had a TV.
Yeah. That was traumatic. That was one of the harder deployments for sure. That, and we didn't work much, but it's take it with a grain of salt, because I think I always equate my deployments and my life in the military to, well, to conventional military, right? Who are just sucking it, waiting in
Yeah.
line to talk on phones, and I'm standing on rooftops with a sat phone every night. And
Oh, yeah.
and then I think about Vietnam, and I think about my grandfather in World War II, and writing letters, and man, we were spoiled.
We were
and
so
we're watching Super Bowls,
Right.
And, you know,
Yeah, I know.
it's
It's
almost
wild.
as bad because we had to watch the commercials, the AFES commercials, right? Don't shake your baby.
Don't shake your
Oh,
baby.
that's what I'm
Never
doing
forget
wrong.
that.
I didn't know that. My bad.
They should. Somebody
Yeah.
should have told me.
Oh, the kid doesn't go in the dishwasher. All right. Lowest common denominator.
That is
right?
a real commercial for those that are
It really
curious.
is.
There is an armed service. What do they call it? Armed Forces TV?
Yeah. I forget. I thought it was
Armed
AFES
Forces
or-
Network, AFN or something.
AFN. That's what it was.
They
AFN.
they put commercials on there, and they actually had one that played over and over and over. Don't shake your baby.
Yeah. Don't beat your significant other, and don't shake your baby. It was very educational. I kind of equate it to the NFL with, like, don't be racist, because I wouldn't know any better otherwise. Thank God they're telling me. Yeah. That's okay. That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
So we were talking before about just the startup life, right? So you're a couple years into this. When did you actually start Community First?
So I actually started Community First as a for-profit company. So Blue Force was
Okay,
and,
yeah, I remember that.
Which Blue Force has now morphed into something else on the for-profit side, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, most of my time is on the nonprofit.
Yep.
So I got out, and I knew I wanted to do something. I started my LLC for contract work, and I did contract for a little bit, and realized that people smart enough to start their own companies were just then using my skills and making all the money, and then paying me a daily rate to come in and teach.
Capitalists.
I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing, man? And I'm like, I can do that. And, training military is great, but I felt like law enforcement needed it a lot more.
Yeah.
So I started something that was focused towards patrol officers and school resource officers. Well, silly me is that you have to have money to hire people in a for-profit company, and they didn't. And I would get military, and I would get federal agencies, and I would do those contracts and made money doing it, but still seeing the Uvaldes and all these incidents happening, and realizing that I didn't feel good knowing that the people that would protect my kids if something were to happen still couldn't get the training.
Yeah.
And I'm very, obviously being from Massachusetts, I'm very close to some people up there in the Boston police. And I called them up and asked them what they thought. Hey, if I did this on the nonprofit side, what do you think they would say? And they're like, Sully, absolutely. Everybody would take advantage of this. I'm like, okay. So then I called my business friends. I'm like, hey guys, if I wanted to raise money up there, what do I need to do? And I got some really good advice. I got some really good legal advice. I got some really good business plan writing advice from this guy called YouTube, and I wrote my business plan for it, and I sent it to every politician and person that I thought would give me some clarity or help, because I wanted to make sure that I had support from everybody and it wasn't partisan. And when you talk about military and law enforcement and guns and all this stuff, it's real easy to have verbiage in there that's going to dissuade somebody. And I didn't want that. And so I have to rewrite. This was 2022, January that I started this. And August is when we did our first training and our first fundraiser. And we did our first fundraiser in Nantucket, Massachusetts. And raised over $300,000 in about 3 hours.
Nice.
And we're like, all right, we're on to something here. And we've raised $1.2 million now in 2.5 years, a little over 2 years, and
so
scratching the surface.
What I'm not.
40
trainings.
And we haven't done that
Not
many
quite
trainings.
40.
Yeah.
It's because there's other expenses, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
there is.
It's called 30 trainings.
Yep.
Maybe, but there's other stuff to be done.
There's other stuff. Yeah, we're growing a business, right?
Yeah.
So I
So
would
then
love
you're
to
out
have,
there, you're raising money, you're doing trainings.
Yeah.
You're answering the emails. You're probably filing the taxes.
I've got some employees now, which I didn't have year one, which was tough.
Yeah.
And obviously I lost my partner early on, who was more focused on the for-profit stuff. So it wasn't a good fit, which is fine. It's not for everybody.
Yep.
And I've got Paul Fitzgerald, who's superintendent of Boston Police, who retired, who's on board and gives me the police perspective. I have a director of training, and I have internet and social media covered. Oh, nice. So I have people on that are helping me and have taken some of the slack away.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I love the training part, and I don't get to do that anymore. I put myself out of a job real quick.
That's how it goes.
And so I do business dev and I fundraise, and I don't ever turn down a meeting. I don't ever turn down a call. It's all right. What can we do? How can we help? And now we're really focused heavily on that federal money that's there, because that could have a significant impact on how much we can scale and how quickly we can scale.
Yeah.
And like doing the math, almost 800,000 cops at 25 to 35 grand a pop, because it's going to go up the more I start hiring out.
Yeah.
It's going to get expensive.
But the return on the investment is significant.
It's priceless in my mind.
Yeah.
Because this is our kids.
Yep.
This is the next school shooting. This is the difference between nobody dying and a dozen kids dying, or whatever it is. And
no, that's exactly right.
teaching the technology.
Let me ask you this, because you've got more exposure than to I, and you've got probably a lot of cops you've talked to. What is the feeling about, like, how do we stop the source of this shit? I mean, obviously it's not ever going to stop 100%, but it has gotten fucking out of control. Like, what is there, what gun control, mental health, like there's all these things that are proposed. What do you think?
So this is a political conversation in my mind, but
I want to know your religion, your sexual preference. I already know, but
so this is just me, my personal. This isn't the nonprofit talking.
Yep.
At the end of the day,
if you don't want to talk about this,
I don't mind at all. At the end of the day, I am not there to prevent the problem. The whole point of this nonprofit is, when this happens again, the person responding is better equipped and capable of stopping and resolving that issue as soon as possible. The hope is somebody else is fixing the other stuff and puts me out of a job.
Right.
Like, you don't need me to do this anymore, because we've figured out the mental health issue. We've figured out the parenting issue. We figured out the gun control.
Parenting is really what it is. Anyway.
Well, there's a lot
you
of
can talk about anything you want, but that's what it
Yeah.
comes down to. And we're not going to fix that anytime soon.
Well,
so,
and my point on that is we're not going to fix it because we can't even come to the table and have a conversation because we are so partisan right now. The only way we're going to fix these issues is if we can figure out ways to communicate as a society without wanting to rip each other's hair out.
Yeah.
And, you should be able to be on both sides of the aisle when it comes to gun control and accept that someone else has a different perspective and you can have a conversation about it. And you can do that without agreeing with them. And maybe through that, we can find middle ground to help work on fixing the problem.
Yep.
But right now, we can't even get to the table, let alone fix the problem. Yeah. And until we can get to the table and figure out a way to talk about things that make people uncomfortable, there is no resolution. There's no solution. It's not going to get fixed.
That'd be an interesting thing to set up.
Yeah.
I don't know how you go about it. I mean, if you could, but it would be cool, really, if it would be revolutionary if you could get people and just, but you'd have to like televise it or something to keep everybody under control. But then people would probably just be grandstanding and trying to appeal to their base. I don't know.
It's got to be an honest conversation. And funny, there's a guy up in Nantucket, and I've been talking to him. Every year they do this thing called the Nantucket Project, where they just bring a bunch of people in. The point being is having people on two sides of a controversial issue to get up and talk.
Right.
And whether it's raising money or awareness or whatever. So I'm going to go talk next year at this event. It's once a year.
Nice.
But I've been talking to one of the guys that helps set it up, and he started and I wouldn't use people's names without first asking them, but he started with being a lobbyist on the left and then being in DC and making friends on the right and realizing that like I've been so engaged in this one side that I never even stopped to look at someone else's perspective. And he found himself being a lot more open to conversation. He came up with this idea of, why don't we bring police and gangbangers together and let them talk? So he wants to have these controversial conversations in a controlled setting. And it's a really unique idea.
Fucking incredible.
Yeah, and he's super smart, and he's very well spoken, and he's a great moderator and mediator. And when you have these really people that want to kill each other,
it's tense, right? And that's pretty awesome.
So the last Nantucket one was Palestinians and Israelis coming in and talking.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And Hunter Biden was the keynote at the end, which was even more crazy, right?
That's pretty crazy.
It fueled a lot of fires.
So how did that go? How was the?
It was cool.
How was the discussion?
It was interesting, and I've given him my military background. It's expensive to go, so it's mostly donors. I was invited, and thank you to one of my bigger supporters who brought me and pitched me to be one of the presenters next year. But
nice.
It was very interesting from a military perspective to look at the people from both sides have the conversation when nobody wanted from the Palestinian side to talk about Hamas. Right? And you can't have a logical conversation or intelligent conversation about what's going on over there if you don't want to admit to a terrorist organization running your country.
And that's the
frustrating
key.
For me.
If you're going to have two people show up, they need to be very open about the shortfalls on their own side. Otherwise, you just come to a stalemate because nobody wants to talk. Everybody's going to just say, it's not my fault. That's pointless, but that's too bad.
But again, stimulated some great conversation.
I'm sure it did. I mean, that's super interesting. That's an awesome concept.
And nobody was upset. Nobody was mad. Nobody was angry. There was obviously a few things that were contentious, and that's the way it should be. Exactly right. So it's a good thing. And, and nice. Hopefully I'll have some.
So you're going to go talk. So it's going to be law enforcement and people.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's law enforcement in that. I think it's more, we've only had early conversations about it, mental health related than anything, and mental health and law enforcement community and military.
Wow.
So it'll be good. I'm excited for it, and it's a good audience and good chance for me to talk about the nonprofit as well and share some of my personal experiences in my own career, but also within the law enforcement community, which I think could be significant for these people to hear.
That's pretty cool.
These people.
So this just came to my mind, and it kind of, I don't know what, it just made me think about this, and especially as you talk about, you can't create, everybody can't be, tier 1 elite special forces. Everybody can't be trained this way. And I had actually somebody that asked me this question, and I thought it was a great question. why don't private companies and why don't people just screen? I mean, I guess the answer is you just would get nobody. But like, what if you were like, if you want to work law enforcement or just take a technology company, if you want to work here and make millions of dollars, you're going to get put through hell to do it. What is why do you think that model hasn't been used?
I think it is. I think it's starting to get used in different places. I know pro sports they're heavy on that now, and I think there are companies that will bring people like me in to talk about leadership and
talk about it. But to put somebody through hell on their own, and like you can quit anytime you want.
Yeah, I don't think. Again, depending on how high level your job is, right? The level of screening has to be appropriate. If you're talking about, financial advisors that are handling billions of dollars, then they're being screened every day. They go to work just like we are, and they have to perform at that high level every day, whether they call it a screening process or not. If you don't perform, you don't get promoted.
Yeah, well, yes and no. But what about the idea that like, so what made a person go in, do this training to get paid very, very little money, only risk their life? You get through the training. The training's the easiest thing you're ever going to do. How do you explain the delta there? It's like, what drives a person to do that?
We don't use that word in this house. Sorry. Cut that out.
No, that stays in. Somebody might have to Google that, why that was a joke, but
I could speak for myself. The service aspect of what I did and wanting to be the best and wanting to go to the command and do the hard job and do it to the best of my ability was paramount. I wanted to protect my family. I wanted to protect my community. And I felt like the best way for me to do that was to be on the front lines with the best organization, working alongside the best guys in the world. So I had a motivation that the thought of quitting or the thought of not being there and not doing it just was never an option. So what's your motivation? Is it, I want to make lots of money? Is it, I want to win a Super Bowl? Is it, if you can find your motivation, then you're willing to put up with a lot of things and a lot of discomfort to be successful. But I think the majority of people don't have motivation because they're working in jobs that they are only doing because they just need to get by.
Yep.
And if you don't have that desire and will to succeed and love what you do every day you do it, then it's really hard to be successful and push yourself beyond capability to be better every day.
I agree with that. And I also think it's like the fear thing. I think the idea of leaving what you know to go pursue something that might expose you to embarrassment, failure, financial loss, whatever it may be. I think so many people have a difficult time overcoming that.
Yeah, fear of failure is huge. And it's a lot easier for a lot of people to not try, because if you don't try, you won't fail.
Right.
But you'll regret it. And I'd rather live with failure than regret. Mm-hmm. And not everybody's that way.
That's exactly right.
And
you know it, even if nobody knows. When you go to sleep,
every night,
you are the judge and jury of whether you failed.
Yeah. So it's tough. And I couldn't imagine if I didn't make it through selection, if I didn't make it through buds. To me, like, that would have been rough. Mm-hmm. And it's a hell of a motivator, though.
Right. Well, and be honest with you, though, it's the same like in business, right? So you're starting your organization now.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of potential embarrassment of failure. And that's what would prevent the vast majority of people from ever starting it.
It's true.
I think the most nervous I've ever been in my entire life, I was like a month out of the military, and I was starting this thing to go try and do like operational consulting in Africa. Mm-hmm. And I went and pitched this conveyor belt company, and I was shitting a brick because it was the first time I was ever like representing myself. I mean, I gave briefs, with admirals and stuff in the room, and it was like no big deal. But then to like go and talk about something where it was like, damn. I mean, I could look like a total fool, and I was shitting a brick.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, public speaking in general, people from our community don't usually do well.
No, it's something you have to just push yourself to do, and then you.
Yeah, it's funny. Rich Devaney, I don't know if you know Rich. He was my commanding officer. I can talk about him. We do stuff together. He's out. He's public. He does a lot with Simon Sinek and other people that are doing great things. He wrote a book on attributes, which it's a good read. I would recommend it. He has another one coming out, but it's not a Navy SEAL book. It's a book written by a Navy SEAL, and it talks about attributes for success and how you can identify them and identify attributes that you maybe need help in fixing. And it's just a wave top look at it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I forgot where I was going with that, but we
were talking about fear and representing yourself and like public speaking.
Oh yeah, and I set up the public speaking. He brought up the fact that he didn't like public speaking either. And this is a guy who was a captain, so he was a higher level officer who was doing a lot of briefing at high levels. And he's like, I was afraid to public speak, and you know what? Because I was afraid, it made me want to do it. And I knew I was going to be afraid. I knew I was going to be scared, but I just kept doing it. And doing it. And now he's going around the world talking to people, and he gets paid to do it. And it's pretty cool to be able to overcome something so daunting as that, which is hilarious thinking about us going over and fighting wars and getting shot and blown up. And
no, it's true.
And it was great. Yeah, I never got scared. But getting in front of 1,000 people is terrifying.
Getting in front of 25. I spoke in front of a football team of high schoolers. And I was like,
well, that's different. They're evil. Kids are evil.
I was like, are these fucking guys going to think I'm old or what? But you do. I mean, there's no sense in denying. I mean, you get self-conscious. Yeah. Like it's nerve-wracking.
It does. You do.
But then you do. You get more used to it. But
I can get up and talk about the nonprofit in front of anybody now, and I'm fine, right? I'm so confident about what I'm talking about, and it comes naturally, and I love answering questions because I feel like I am so immersed in this now that there's nothing I'm going to get that I can't instantly respond to. But a lot of times I'll get brought in to talk about leadership and team building and things like I'm going to talk to Morgan Stanley next month, and it's like, all right, I actually have to prep. Like someone could say, hey, I need you to come up and talk to 200 people about community first. No, I don't prep. No problem. I'll just show up. And we'll do it, and we're good.
Yep.
This is like, okay, I'm practicing, I'm prepping, I'm worried, I'm still going to get there, and it's going to be like, sweaty palms a little bit once I get going. I'm fine.
It's the first 5 words, and then
So it's different, man. And the fear of failure is huge, and I would say even more so than anything else in the nonprofit world because it's not my money. It's other people investing in me to do something right and to do something successfully. And if I fail, I am letting them down. If I don't want to get up and work today because I'm feeling like crap, if I don't want to do this or go on this trip because I'm not, then I'm letting them down and I'm doing them a disservice. And they're giving me, collectively over $1 million to make this work because this is their communities that are getting served by this knowledge. So it's scary at times when you think about how many people depend on me to be successful. And I don't want to let them down. And that's a motivator.
It is. It is. Did you obviously got into some leadership roles in the military?
Yeah. One or two. I mean, I left as a team leader, assault team leader. So I did that my last several pumps.
How do you look at leadership? Like what made you a successful leader? What or were you not?
I mean, you tell me.
Well, I'm hoping you got better, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly right. I think that and you could call me a leader when we were working together, but I was like a year ahead of you, so I don't know if that really qualifies. But you were a leader to me. I certainly took pride in being there and helping you guys learn and getting you whatever minimal knowledge I had at that time, right? But I always throughout my career and even before, like one of my best leaders, and I've said this in other podcasts, worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I still to this day have used things that I learned working for this guy at that level.
Interesting.
Just because I found so much use in his style and his patience and his ability to break things down to a low level that anybody could understand it. And, you think the military, that's important, right? So I always took things from people along the way that I liked and tried to use them in how I led. But I also always took things I didn't like and really scrutinized myself to make sure that I wasn't doing those things.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you start, my master's is in strategic leadership. So I took a book approach to leadership and identifying attributes and qualities of people and okay, well, what type of leader do I need to be for this specific person? Like, how is he going to respond if I come in and try to point the finger and say, you do this now, and not explain? Because this generation learns differently. They respond differently to different types of leadership.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily impingent upon us to expect them to change. We raise these kids, right? Like we're the reason they are this way.
Sure.
So maybe we have to be willing to bend a little bit to meet them in the middle, right? So I'd like to think that I was a good leader, and I know I had a lot of learning lessons along the way that I took to heart and tried to be different. But I've gotten some great feedback over the years, and nothing makes me feel better than when a support person, I'll run into them or I'll come across them on social media and they'll throw me out a compliment. Man, working for you, you weren't like any other SEAL. Like you treated us so respectfully. You were so good to us. We loved working for you. Like to me, that means more than having another team guy say, bro, it was great working for you. Because being a team guy, it's easy to lead other team guys.
Yeah. That's very true.
It's different. It's so much different.
When people don't realize how many people are behind the scenes in the special forces that are, I don't know what the ratio would be, but it's probably 3-1 or 4-1, 5. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's a lot of people that have to make all that stuff happen.
Yeah,
and
they haven't been selected the way we've been selected. I've been really lucky that I've had some amazing guys work for me throughout the year. I'm like, I don't know if you can even imagine going to work and being like, all right, here's what we got to get done today. And before you can say anything else, it's already getting done. Right? That's the kind of guys I had working for me. So it's all right, well, let me just look strategically at, this guy's strategic vision. And I'm going to try and put that into my guys and make sure that we get our medals or our task list done. And we are ready to perform when they say it's time to go. And when you have a bunch of high performers, it's a pretty cool job.
Yeah.
Hardest time of being a leader is when things aren't going your way and when things are bad, and that's when you have to really dig deep down.
When I've analyzed this leadership. I mean, that's the whole reason I'm having all these conversations, which is a blast. But I'm trying to analyze the whole idea of leadership because a lot, people will be like, I think there's this concept like you can learn how to become a leader. And I don't disagree. I'm not saying you can't, but I think it's like you can't learn how to play the guitar by reading a book about playing the guitar. I think you have to learn, you play the guitar, you suck at it for a long time, then you get a little better, then you get a little better. I think
does that happen?
Well, we're going to jam.
I'm still waiting for
that. We're going to jam here in a minute. We'll figure it out. But
little bit.
Like I think that's the thing with leadership, and I think what I've come to the conclusion for now, it's not final. I think leaders are the people that deal with fear the best. Because at the end of the day, there's a difference between an administrative leader is just somebody who tells you what needs to be done that day, whether they decided it or not.
Yeah.
And that's not a leader. Like if you pictured yourself, you go onto a battlefield, right? And your commanding officer sitting there and he's petrified, you wouldn't follow him. No matter what his rank was or anything else, you wouldn't. And if some brand new guy that was his first day was just busted out and he was like, I've got the plan and we go through here and he runs through a hell of bullets, you would follow him. Like that's, and in business and in everything else in life, the people that take those moments, like you said, there's moments that define a leader. And they're not a lot of them because it's when shit hits the fan. That's when you make the hard decision and show the fearless quality.
Yeah.
That above all is what people want to follow. And I think then you have, so to work on becoming fearless or as fearless, to work on becoming resilient to fear anyway, I think is how you become a leader. I think leadership is like a consequence. It's not the thing. It's the thing that people will follow because of a bunch of other things.
I would push back just a little bit. And I think fear is definitely, I agree with you, but I would say resilient to stress. Because fear is a stressor, but there's other stressors out there as well.
Fair enough.
And if you can handle whatever those stresses are, then you're going to be a good leader, right? And if you can protect your guys from those stressors as well, whether through example or through training or teaching or
right.
I think that helps. So to me, fear is just one aspect of it. And you're absolutely right. But there's, think of peacetime SEALs, right? You still have good and bad leaders, and there's not really any fear during that time, but there is a lot of stress and a lot of these, shit coming down the chain because there's nothing going on, and you're trying to protect your guys from it instead of being a yes man who says, "Oh, yep, here we go, another dog and pony."
Yeah,
but we haven't seen our family this week,
right?
So I don't know.
It's fair, and I guess it depends how you define fear, because in business there's fear, but it's not. You're not going to die.
Yeah,
but you might really screw up and lose a big deal or piss somebody off or something. I mean, a lot of people don't do things because of fear, because they're afraid of screwing up, which is a stress. Yeah, there's other stresses like becoming overwhelmed, too much to do. There's family stresses, and that's true. Leaders help people deal with their own life and their own. But at the end of the day, the fear moment when there's a pissed off customer or a gunfight, that the person that steps up in that moment, that's like you said, who's prepped, because there's nobody that's just like a magical, like a great, just naturally good at everything.
I agree.
So it is that person that has prepped and
present
run scenarios.
Excluded. Right. Yeah.
There's nobody else.
No, you're right. But you think about how much risk mitigation we do in the military and in the teams, so that when we are faced with those moments, we're prepared for those moments.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a way to translate that into the business world. I'm sure there is. I spend a lot of time trying to make sure that everything's buttoned up and tight, and I'm putting a good product forward so that if something goes wrong, I've got redundant systems and backups, right? But the military, we SEALs, Tier 1 Special Operations, aren't running into these situations without thousands of hours of prep work to mitigate the risk of fear, among other things, and whatever the stresses are, to still be able to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in law enforcement. That doesn't happen in conventional military. That it's like, all right, you got boot camp. Here you go.
No, there's definitely really strong correlations in business. There's lots of risk mitigation planning. There's lots of contingency planning and backup planning. But like everything else, there's those times where it goes to shit.
Yeah.
And, like I was the CEO of a company, there was 240 employees, 7 locations, and we got hit by a cyber attack that shut every single computer down across all 7 locations.
But thank God you had a backup, right?
Yeah. Hell no. I mean, we had some, right? Yeah. We had a little bit of insurance. We had lawyers that could help. Yeah. But what I noticed was, and this is kind of like what you were saying, like in that situation, all I could do was at that point be transparent.
Sure.
And, I had to be the one that showed no fear in that situation.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was people figured it out. Right. I couldn't tell every single person what to do. I gave the basic thing was like, make the customers happy right now.
Yep.
At any cost whatsoever. So we had people go out and figure out, because we ran these sophisticated CNC machines that ran off computers that were attached to the network, which no longer existed. So they went out and got disposable thumb drives, and they were like hand running programs to keep the machines doing all this shit. They just got guerrilla. They just got, but it was like
solve problems.
Yeah. They just got,
it's huge.
They got after it. And that, those, so you can make the plans, but then sometimes plans go to shit anyway.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of correlation between the risk planning that the military does and what the civilian world tries to do. And there's also correlation that sometimes your plans go to shit.
Yeah, well, everything we do, we expect it to go to shit.
Right.
And that's where we come up with our contingencies.
Yeah.
And we literally sit down as part of our mission planning sessions is like, all right, what can go wrong? And granted, you can't think of everything that could possibly go wrong, but for the most part, you can get pretty damn close.
Yeah.
You know,
that's true.
And you're much better equipped to respond to a situation psychologically when you've seen it before in training, or at least discussed the contingencies of, if this happens, then this.
Yeah.
And we are real, especially at the tier 1 level, we're really good at doing that.
I think that's kind of one of the most interesting parts of this discussion is just how many times we've talked about prepping, and that's the discipline. I mean, that's the discipline in the whole thing.
Yeah, it really is.
That's super interesting. So what's your vision now for Sully, for Community First?
So the vision for the nonprofit is, obviously we have goals we're trying to hit on fundraising over the next 1, 3, 5 years. The 10-year plan is I want to have regional facilities across the country, because at the end of the day, to be able to drive costs down, I need to start bringing cops to me.
Right.
And it's an initial investment up front to start building out these facilities. But, these are places self-sufficient where we can now start bringing them, we can house them, we can feed them, we can train them, and then we can send them back, and we can do it repetitively.
So now doing it repeatedly.
My costs on travel are high because all my instructors are coming out of here. And, my goal has always been that, and I'm pretty close to this now, as a guy gets out, let's say a guy retires tomorrow and he doesn't have a plan for the future, but wants to make some money, wants to give back to the community, I will hire him as a program manager wherever he goes. So, I got a guy right now going to Montana next year, who I want him to do that for me in Montana.
Wow.
And, if I got a guy that's from Iowa, all right, hey, you're going to be my Iowa regional guy, and then I'll have the money to pay you, and you're going to be me in that area. You're going to raise money for me. You're going to set up the training for me. And then eventually, when you're busy enough, we'll put a facility there that now you can run the facility, and we can start bringing officers. I don't know why I do this. Like, what do I do with my hands?
You're like a conductor. Raise it up.
But that's the long-term goal. Yep. And I do think it's very doable. I think the money's there. I think there's these big chain box stores should be investing in their communities as well, because these officers are responding to every shooting in a grocery store and a Target and a Walmart and a movie theater, right? There's all these places that would benefit greatly from this level of training for police, and we just need to get in front of the right people, and that's my job. That's what I've been doing, is trying to make those connections. And that's why I'm at the inauguration. That's why I'm going to all the events that I go to. I'm just, who can I get in front of and set up a meeting and ask for money? Which is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But
no kidding.
But I'm getting much better at it, and I think, to me, the mission is bigger than the humility of having to ask for money. And
absolutely,
we're getting there.
Absolutely, well, that's awesome, man. Well, look, I appreciate the conversation.
Likewise.
I think it's been even for me, and that's, again, I just do this for fun, because every time I talk to somebody that's gotten to this level of elite and excelling at what they do, there's all these nuances about what they do. Obviously, prepping is a huge thing, and that, honestly, probably one of my weakest attributes.
I would say prepping, and the other thing that I talk about a lot, which is just as important, is the after action. It's like, how do you review your successes and failures in a way that we are now becoming better for it?
I like it.
And nobody wants to review successes. Everybody wants to look at failures, or they want to sweep it under the rug.
Or ignore failures.
But it's two things we excelled at. It's the ability to prepare and mitigate risk, and the ability to debrief and then become better every time we do something, whether it's training or real world.
Damn. That's
huge.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So what's the deets? CP1.org?
No, that's somebody else. C1P.org. Please stop representing other companies on my podcast. This is my time, Chris.
C1P.
The letter C, the number 1P.org. That's the website. Community_first_project is the Instagram page. At Sully_C1P. You can get all those links just by going to any one of those sites, whether it's the website or the social media.
Yeah.
And then give us a follow and share.
Yeah.
We obviously we do a lot of podcasting, so we'll post all that stuff on there. We'll post some training videos on there and success stories, things like that. So, and unfortunately, we have to post some of the facts, and some of the facts are alarming. And one of the big things I do, and why I've become so public about this, which is countercultural to our community, is that the general public doesn't understand the problem right now. They don't understand the shortfalls in training and what that means to them specifically and to their families. And we have to get the word out at how underfunded and undertrained police are. So people know.
Yeah. No, well, what you're doing is amazing. You're an awesome dude.
Thanks,
I had the privilege to know you for a while, which has been pretty cool. I appreciate you having this conversation today.
Glad we did it.
Admirable stuff that
Appreciate
you're doing
brother.
out there, and Godspeed, and anything I can do to help, let me know.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Dude. All right.
All right, homie.